just want to talk really quick about a couple things. One thing we've already done. I'm going to talk about the budget. I want to talk about a couple issues that are going to pop up, and then I'll briefly hit my agenda. First of all, on a local note, Route 1 through Fort Belvoir is currently progressing. The Federal Highway Administration is currently doing the preliminary engineering for that. I've had a couple conversations with them about it. There's a church just south of Woodlawn Stables, which is right in the path of the road, at least their cemetery is, and they're trying to decide whether or not to realign Route 1 around the southern/eastern side of that church instead of widening it towards Woodlawn Plantation. And so that's an issue that's percolating out there. And also they have to decide on the exact design of the road, whether to put a right-of-way down the middle or whether to reserve space on the side for whatever kind of future transit we have. And so keep your eyes open on that. But we've been having some discussions with the Federal Highway Administration about that, and that project is progressing because of the money that Congressman Moran was able to secure for us via an earmark. Additionally, the bid protest on Mulligan Road was dismissed last month, and the preliminary site work on Mulligan Road has begun. So for my constituents who are in 22309 or in Hayfield, the relief is coming, I promise. That road has been on again, off again, on again, off again. It's finally on again, and the Highway Administration tells me that they're out there right now preparing the work to get the bulldozers out this spring. Apparently they don't do as much of the grading type stuff in the winter. They're waiting for it to thaw up some, so that's happening. And then the other thing is the Route 1 transit study has been evolving some over the last 6 months. Senator Poehler carried a resolution last year which authorized the new transit study. The McDonald administration funded it for us. And what's going to happen with that is I think what's going to happen, I'm not sure it's been 100% locked in, finalized, but where it looks like it's headed is the Department of Rail and Public Transit is going to do a study with part of that money to look at sort of medium to interim term transit changes on Route 1 to facilitate transit over the next 10 or 15 years. Little things that can be done to make the buses move faster, to make transit more available. And then the county is doing what's called an alternatives analysis, which is a big federal process which you go through where they study different modes of transit. They'll look at whether or not we ought to have bus rapid, of course there's a no-build alternative, then they look at, for example, bus rapid transit, light rail, and a metro extension, and they decide which of those alternatives, or for example, a mix of those alternatives might be best for our corridor. And it's important that we not think of this as an all or nothing thing. For example, we could go metro part of the way and then something else part of it. It doesn't have to be one thing the entire length of the road, but if we go through that process, then the federal government might pick up part of the tab for the improvement if their study finds that it's justified. And so the state's going to throw in some money from that pursuant to the money that Senator Poehler and I helped secure last year, and then the county is going to fund part of it, and that process will take, I think, about 3 years. But that's where things are on Route 1 related things. And of course, if you want to hear what's going on development-wise, come to Jerry Highland's town meeting in about 2 weeks, and his bus tour will tell you everything you need to know about what's going up where. One thing we just did in the House is we just passed redistricting yesterday on a congressional redistricting. Yeah, they rammed it right through. We took our oath on Wednesday. The Privileges and Elections Committee went over in the corner and huddled, immediately passed the bill. They put it on a supplemental calendar in front of us for the State of the Commonwealth address on Wednesday night. It was on the floor on Thursday for debate. And we didn't even know it was going to be there for debate. I had intended to put in a nonpartisan alternative, either the governor's commission's plan or one of the college plans. There's a college redistricting competition. I wanted to put one of those in. But we didn't have time to have legislative services prepare it so we could actually have it debated because they ran it through so fast. We asked them to stop, and they wouldn't just give us an extra day. They wouldn't give us an extra day to get that done. And we ended up voting it yesterday, and it passed, I forget, I think like 76 to 20, and I was one of the 20 no's. That congressional redistricting plan was a Republican alternative. It was a plan that was designed by the incumbents. Most people view it as preserving the status quo in Virginia. What it does for our area is it basically puts my entire delegate seat within the 8th Congressional District. Basically, it puts all of Mount Vernon back into the 8th. The 11th District gets picked up somewhere down around Lorton, I think. But in terms of my delegate seat, which is basically a little bit of Hayfield, and then everything from South Kings Highway, Huntley Meadows Park, all the way to the river, minus Westgate. All that is now in the 8th Congressional District. So that's the big change for us if it does pass. It goes to the Senate next week. I suspect they'll shoot it right through because there's a motion to dismiss on Friday in one of the lawsuits, and that's why they're doing this. It has nothing to do with good public policy. They're trying to kill a lawsuit is what it's really all about. But and then after that, it's going to go to the courts. Many of us believe it's illegal what they're trying to do. The Constitution of Virginia says that we are required to complete redistricting in the year 2011. We didn't do it. And many of you probably don't know if you saw the op-ed that I wrote where I said that because we didn't do it, a judge should have a nonpartisan commission do it, and that's the way it ought to happen. But we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But that's one of the things we've already done. So our state budget is the next thing I want to talk about. The budget is still bad. I think Senate Finance says we have a $1.5 billion shortfall. The governor says and thinks it's around $500 to $600 million. But either way, everybody agrees that if you consider inflationary increases, that we are still in a negative budget environment. That is, our costs are going up faster than our revenues, mainly because of Medicaid. But there's other things like retirement contributions and rainy day contributions and other things which are forcing that. But last month, we're not out of the bad economy yet. Last month, revenue was down 4.5% over December's revenue for the first time since July 2010. So, the economy is not all the way back on track. We're not out of the woods yet, and there still is not a lot of money out there. The governor has proposed a lot of new spending, $100 million to higher ed, and $100 million. He wants to take money out of the general fund and pay for roads with it, which is something that I think everybody at this table has a problem with. He's actually proposed to balance the budget largely by cutting K-12 education. Another thing that's very important in our area that the governor's proposed is to cut what's called cost to compete, which is extra money that was negotiated into the budget years ago for Northern Virginia to help get Northern Virginia's teachers' salaries up competitive, because we have to our teachers generally just make more than they do in the rest of the state. We have to compete with Maryland and D.C., jurisdictions that are paying their teachers pretty well. And the governor would like to cut that out for all of Northern Virginia. A lot of us will be working to try and get that back in. He's also cut Medicaid pretty heavily, which is health care for children and the elderly. And that's something that also affects my district significantly, especially compared with most other people in Fairfax County, because of a lot of the poverty that we have on Route 1. There's a lot of people on Route 1 that are on Medicaid. My district has the highest incidence of uninsured population. I have the highest incidence of non-acute emergency room visits in my district. That is, people using the emergency room for primary medical care. So Medicaid cuts are a big deal to my district, and that's one of the main ways the governor's balancing the budget. Another thing we're going to be fighting about budget-wise is VRS. Our entire general fund budget for the 2-year biennium is $35 billion. Virginia retirement system's shortfall right now is $20 billion. So, in other words, 2/3 of the entire general fund spending is the size of our retirement deficit, because our contributions to the retirement system and because of stock market losses. That's how far behind we are in our retirement system. The governor would like to turn our retirement system into like a 401k plan, and a lot of us have problems with that. That's another budget thing we're going to fight about. Then
he wants the local governments to.
Right. But yeah, he's also asking our local governments to make a significant contribution to make up for that. Local governments also use the Virginia retirement system as a way to fund their pensions. And asking local governments to fund a significantly increased contribution basically is, in a lot of ways, is asking for the local governments to push that onto your property taxes, because that's the only way local government can fund these things is property taxes. So, you have to consider the consequences of these spending decisions. One of the things we've seen over the last 4 years is pushing more and more and more of our responsibilities on the local government, which means it all goes on to the bill for your house, because it's the only way local government can make it up. And that's been true in prisons, the whole justice system. Ann can tell you that's just the way it's been working on our social safety net. That's the way roads have been going lately. So it's all going on your property taxes. We'll see what happens in terms of legislative battles. We'll see what happens with transportation this year. the Washington Post floated a rumor on the op-ed page yesterday that there might be some deal in the works for indexing the gas tax. I haven't heard that. I don't know where they got that from, but it'd be nice if we get some new revenue in the system, but it's a big, big, big problem. There's been some confusion in the media about what I'm proposing. I have not introduced any kind of bill involving transportation revenue. I'm happy to support an appropriate bill that puts new revenue in the system, and I've said that for 3 years now. I've co-sponsored Vivian Watts and Tom Rust's bill. Tom Rust is a Republican in Herndon. Vivian is a Democrat from Annandale, former Secretary of Transportation. They have a 3-part proposal, which would involve new revenue coming to Northern Virginia, and also some, for example, a phased-in sales tax on gas, which would keep the money in Northern Virginia. Keeping the money in Northern Virginia is something that's very important to me. And I was talking to a reporter, and that story turned into another story, turned into another one. And next thing I knew, I was the big proponent of increasing the gas tax around the whole state, which is it's partly true. But I'm not putting a bill in. If you look at my bill, you'll see what my proposals are. But that might happen. We'll see. I'm not optimistic. The governor's been very clear that he's not going to support anything to raise any kind of proposal to increase taxes. So I'd be surprised, but we'll see.
But his only proposal is to take general fund, take the sales tax away from education and use it for transportation.
Right. Right now he wants to basically use school, mental health, public safety money, use that to fund roads. And putting roads in competition with all those other things is a bad idea for a lot of reasons, which we can get into if anyone wants to ask a question about it. ABC privatization apparently is dead, thank God. I don't think we're going to see that again. There's a lot of proposals out there on school choice, which we're going to be fighting about this year with what's happened in the Senate. Adam and I fought a proposal last year to basically take $21 million of tax credits and provide basically public support for private schools. That's something that I'm very opposed to. We passed it last year, about 66-33, something like that. We're going to be seeing that again. The governor's taking it up as one of his proposals this year. Basically, to take your tax money and send it to private schools. I have a problem with that. I think it's illegal under our Constitution. If anybody wants to ask a question, we can get into that. There's also going to be a proposal this year, I think, to allow homeschool children to play public school sports, which is something I also don't. I think it's well-intentioned. I still think it's a good idea. We're going to see a lot of bills about guns and firearms, which I know is near and dear to one of our attendees' hearts. But there's some talk about repealing the one-gun-a-month rule. I'm not sure if that bill has been introduced yet, but we suspect it will. There's a proposal to have us able to manufacture guns in Virginia that are not subject to any kind of federal restrictions. If we make them in Virginia and we stamp them made in Virginia, and we only sell them in Virginia. So, for example, you could have an unlicensed machine gun or an unlicensed bazooka, or make a gun as big as you want. That, I think, passed our chamber last time, didn't it?
Oh, yes, we killed that.
Yeah, okay. And see, you gotta understand, like, in the past, one of the things that would happen in the Senate is they had a lot of things would die in committee or subcommittee. And Toddy chaired many important subcommittees. And Toddy played a part in... There was some firearms bills, I think about 2 years ago, she had a committee on, and another one, immigration wasn't your committee, where you were on it, but okay. Yeah, anyways, last year there's a lot of immigration bills that went there. But there's also going to be probably a bill about concealed weapon permit reciprocity, so if you get a concealed weapon permit in any state, Virginia has to honor it, and there's some states that have lower standards than we do, which concerns me. I don't want to delegate. Yeah. Well, there's also an effort at the federal level to do this. But for example, I don't think that Idaho ought to be deciding who gets a concealed weapon permit in Virginia. I got a problem with that, or Wyoming, or whatever. Sunday hunting is going to be big. There's a big push this year to allow Sunday hunting. Virginia is one of, I think, 5 states that doesn't allow Sunday hunting still, and that's something I support. I don't know where these guys stand, but I think we should allow Sunday hunting. It affects Northern Virginians. We're going to see a lot of choice bills. This personhood thing is floating around. I'm not sure everybody's really thought through the consequences of this. Somebody pointed out to me that if you're pregnant, you can drive HOV too, if that's the law. You know, we'll see if that we passed that last year. There's going to be a mandatory ultrasound bill again this year. We haven't seen that. That hasn't made it to the floor the last couple of times.
Does everyone know what that is?
Does everybody know what the mandatory ultrasound is? Basically, if you want to have an abortion, you have to have an ultrasound done. You have to view it before you're allowed to go through with it. And then we're going to see a lot of immigration bills. We're going to see a whole lot of immigration bills. My district today, I think, has a significant Hispanic population, a significant Salvadoran population. It also has a significant Ghanaian population, which I've learned knocking doors on Route 1. A lot of folks from Ghana and El Salvador, and a lot of other countries as well. My district's now about 7% Asian, but very few of it Southeast Asia. It's actually a lot of Pakistani, Indian, other parts of Asia. And I think a lot of this immigration stuff is very, I don't think it's well-intentioned at all. I think it's mean-spirited, and a lot of it, I think, is Virginia doesn't have the resources to be doing this stuff, especially in the budget environment we're in. Uranium mining has been talked about in the press a lot. There's a study that came out recently, which I think is probably going to put an end to that.
I think that's going to be dead.
Yeah, I hope so. I've seen 6 texting while driving bills already, which is going to be an issue. Personally, I haven't made up my mind on that yet. I've never had to vote on it yet, but I've got a lot of issues with it both ways, and I can't decide where I come out, but that's going to be an issue. Then I think Toddy or Adam, I can't remember which mentioned it, but the voter ID, the voter restriction stuff, it really bothers me. I've spoken out on that 2 years in a row on the floor. I led the fight against it. You know, I knocked at 2 people that always stick out to me. I knocked the door of a 96-year-old woman in Stratford precinct in my first election. And she was an original owner in Stratford, and told me she was going to vote. And you know, and I said, well, vote absentee. And she's like, I don't do that. And on election day, she showed up, got out of the passenger door, got out on her walker, said, you know, I told you I was going to be here, and I'm here, and I'm voting. And I'm pretty sure she didn't have a driver's license. And
she was a passenger, I hope, in the car.
Yeah, yeah. And then I was also knocking another door up near West Potomac, and I was talking to the 2 people in the house, and I was looking at their list, and I said, you know, this says there's a person here who's 105 years old. They said, oh yeah, she's right over there. And I went and met this woman, I think it was Maddie Lou Ware, I think was her name. Today, if she's still alive, she'd be like 108. But, you know, she had registered to vote for President Obama, and she had voted in 2008, and I'm pretty sure she doesn't have a driver's license. I mean, she doesn't need one, right? And this proposal that's out there says that you have to have an ID to vote. And the law today is not, you don't have to have an ID, they ask for it. But if you don't have it, you sign an affidavit swearing that you're who you say you are, or it's a felony if you lie. And what this law would say is if you don't have a picture ID, you can't vote. You have to vote provisionally. And a provisional vote means your vote is not counted on election day. It's sent back to the government center. You got to take 3 buses to the Fairfax County Government Center and defend your vote the next day in front of the electoral board. And if you don't have a driver's license, I don't know how realistic that is, but a lot of people's license get suspended. They lose it. There's people that just don't have it, don't want it. I have 30 nuns that live in a monastery up Port Claire's up in Bucknell Precinct. I'm pretty sure they don't have licenses. You know, voting is about as fundamental as a constitutional right as it gets, and I don't think it's a right that we condition and put all these restrictions on. And most people have been pretty clear that what that's really about is just knocking out about 1 or 2% of the electorate to try and tilt the scales in the presidential election. That's what it's really about. And I really have a problem with that. I've put in 28 bills that you have right here. That's a lot. Some people think I've lost my mind. But a lot of them, I think many of them are going to pass this year. My first one, my Commonwealth Transportation Board bill, has been stolen by 3 Republicans. So that's usually a good sign your bill's going to pass in my chamber. So the Commonwealth Transportation Board decides how our money is spent on transportation projects. Northern Virginia has 1 vote out of 10 seats because they base the votes in the 1930 congressional districts. Okay, 65% of the state's population is 33% of the votes. And my bill says they have to base that on current congressional districts. And like I said, 3 Republicans have taken my bill and introduced their own version. We had a meeting about it yesterday. I think it's going to go this time. We'll see. I have a lot of government reform bills and transparency bills, like a bill that would require us to record our committee meetings so that you at home could listen or watch in on what we do in committee. That's where most of the work's done. Right now, you have to be in Richmond to see any of it, and there's very little record left of anything that we do. We're one of only 15 states that does not do that, and I think it's time. It only costs about $85,000 to wire the rooms, get the software. I have a lot of other things about cleaning up our disclosure process so that you all can see our interest in voting and who's giving us money and who's giving us gifts and trips and things, so people can connect the dots between special interests and our voting behavior. I've got a couple renewable energy bills about solar. I've got some consumer protection bills. I've got a bill to prohibit the governor from limiting child care subsidies. The governor's proposed to limit child care subsidies to 5 years per family. That's a big deal for my district. There's a lot of people in my district that need that in order to work. And limiting it to 5 years per family if you have 3 or 4 kids doesn't work. It means your youngest children don't get the same quality of child care that your oldest do, or you can't work when your kids get older. Then I've got a bill that requires mental health plans at community colleges, and then I've got a bunch of criminal and civil justice reforms, stuff I picked up on because I'm a practicing lawyer. So that's the short version of the 28, but there's a lot going on this session. I have a survey that's coming to you in the mail if you haven't already got it. I'd really prefer you do my online one because it's much more comprehensive. Yeah, my aide has it right there. But my online one is much more comprehensive, and it saves us a lot of time data entering. But if you can go on my website and do it, I'd really appreciate it. And